Hello, my name is Annie Altamirano and today I would like to talk about differentiated instruction, myth or reality. But first of all, I would like to thank the Latvian Association of Teachers of English for accepting my proposal and thus allowing me to be part of this conference. Thank you very much. So, in this presentation, I'm going to explain what differentiation is and what it means in the classroom. Then I'll give some background information about it and I'll offer some strategies that you can use to support your learners. Finally, I'll give you some tips for managing a differentiated class. So, we all know that students arrive with a variety of mixed abilities, wants and needs, and more importantly, they exhibit different learning strengths, styles and language skills of which we need to be aware of. One of the ways in which we can overcome this challenge is by implementing differentiated instruction. However, there are a lot of myths about what differentiated instruction is, and these and others may come to mind. Many teachers think that differentiation is individualized instruction, and it is not. It is true that differentiated instruction offers multiple ways of learning, and although it aims at attending to students as individuals, it doesn't assume a separate assignment for each learner. It is not chaotic. Fear of losing control of student behavior is a major concern for all of us teachers. In effectively differentiated classrooms, orderly flexibility is a defining feature. It is not another way to provide homogeneous grouping. Flexible grouping accommodates students who are strong in some areas and weak in others. The goal is to have learners work with a variety of peers and with tasks designed to draw on the strengths of all group members, but also to share up students' areas of need. It is not tailoring the same suit of clothes. It is not letting students volunteer to answer questions or grading some students harder than others in response to their perceived ability. Such modifications show an awareness of differences in students' needs, but it is not enough to address significant learning issues. And very importantly, differentiated instruction is not just for learners who struggle. Students who have identified learning challenges such as ADHD, visual or hearing impairment, or intellectual disabilities are, of course, likely to need scaffolding on a regular basis. However, learners who learn rapidly, think deeply, make meaningful connections across content areas also need challenges on a regular basis to grow academically as they should. So, what is differentiation? What is the reality? Differentiation is relevant, rigorous, and proactive. Effective differentiation is designed to be robust enough to challenge all learners in the classroom. It is more equitative than quantitative. A learner who has demonstrated mastery of one skill is ready to stop practicing that skill and move on to a subsequent one. So, adjusting the quantity of an assignment will be less effective than altering the nature of the assignment to match the actual needs. Also, differentiation is rooted in assessment. Diagnostic pre-assessment routinely takes place at the beginning of a unit to throw light in individual learners' needs and interests in relation to the unit goals. Throughout a unit, we can assess students' readiness levels, interests, and approaches to learning, and we can design learning experiences based on the latest understanding of their needs. Also, differentiated instruction is taking multiple approaches to content, process, and product. By differentiating these three elements, we can offer different approaches to what students learn, how they learn, and how they demonstrate learning. It is obviously student-centered, And it is also a blend of whole class, group, and individual instruction. And it is organic and dynamic in that students and teachers are learners together. Ongoing collaboration with students is necessary to refine learning opportunities so that they are effective for each learner. So, how can we differentiate? How can we define differentiation? Differentiation is never something that we add onto a lesson. It's something that runs throughout what we do as teachers through the planning phase, the teaching phase, and the assessment phase. Therefore, it is what we do to help students make progress regardless of their starting points. It means ensuring that all learners, no matter their ability, interest, context, have the support and the scaffolding they need to meet or to exceed the learning intentions. At the heart of the classroom practice of differentiation is the modification of three curriculum-related elements: content, process, and product. But these are by no means the only elements we can differentiate. These can and frequently are used in combination and alongside other techniques, for example, differentiating by grouping, by pace, or by questioning. Now, given the length of this talk, I will focus on the three main elements: content, process, and product only. Now, content is what students need to know, what they need to understand and do something with. And differentiating content is perhaps the most frequently used and possibly the easiest form of differentiation. There are two ways in which we can think about differentiating content: as adapting what we teach or what we want the students to learn, or as adapting how we give students access to what we teach or what we want them to learn. However, we need to remember that even if we are giving different learners different resources at different levels of complexity, they should all be working towards the same learning outcome. And you can do this by presenting content in different ways, for example, using graphic organizers, Venn diagrams, timelines, flowcharts. If you have a long text, a reading text, for example, which you think is very long, or a listening text that you think is very long, you can divide it into more manageable chunks. You can simplify a text to eliminate any unnecessary vocabulary using simpler language. There are certain online tools such as readability tests or English vocabulary profile tools that will help you check the level of a text and adapt it. You can also use a variety of texts and resource materials. Building a class library from texts at various levels is another option. For example, using magazines, newsletters, brochures, other print material, useful websites, podcasts, CDs, DVDs. Also using note-taking organizers that follow the flow of ideas from a text. Using stepped activities, that is, tasks that contain a series of separate elements, the difficulty of which gradually increases. All learners will be challenged. So, if we take, for example, the topic of rainforests, you can design activities at 3 levels of difficulty. For example, write a letter to a friend explaining what rainforests are and where they are found, or draw a diagram explaining how rainforests develop, label the diagram and write an explanation, or create a table outlining arguments in favor and against deforestation so learners can progress along these stepped activities. You can also use worksheets and scaffolding cards. For example, worksheets, you can categorize them according to the degree of difficulty. the same worksheet at 3 different levels of difficulty, where A is the least challenging with the most support for the least confident learners, and C the most challenging with the least support for the most confident learners. And differentiated worksheet B is somewhere in between. And it is important that all the worksheets lead to the same learning outcome. You can have also worksheets with open questions or tasks that give options. You can use color coding instead of having the students go always to worksheet A, which is sometimes frustrating because they know that worksheet A is for the least confident. Okay, color code them for this lesson. For the next lesson, put pictures. For another lesson, use numbers. For another lesson, use letters. Also, provide scaffolding cards with sentence starters or stems for writing or speaking tasks. They can be generated by you or by the students working in pairs or small groups. For example, if learners need to discuss as a class or in groups, you can provide them with cards with phrases they can use to express opinions, ask for clarification, disagreeing politely. In reading and listening tasks, you can turn and answer the question exercise into a more stepped task. For example, a true-false, a multiple choice, tick the items that are mentioned, complete the sentences. Here you have an example of a worksheet at 3 levels of difficulty. The activity is to learn the rules of how to use certain conjunctions, right? These 4 basic conjunctions. So in worksheet A, you would have the rule, the 4 conjunctions, and it's just a matching exercise. Worksheet C, which has the least support, does not have the conjunctions. The students have to read the rule and decide which conjunction they have to put here, but they don't have any support. And worksheet B is somewhere in between. They have the rule, but they have an option here, right? So the ultimate aim is the same. They have to learn the rules of how to use the 4 conjunctions, but the level of support is different. But before deciding how we are going to differentiate the content, we need to identify the specific skills and concepts that the students must achieve. And we can measure this and analyze this through a variety of assessments. For example, using a KWA chart. This is one very simple way to find out or assess what learners already know about a topic. And we can use this assessment tool at the beginning and at the end of a lesson or a unit. So, for example, at the beginning of the lesson, you draw a 3-column table. I prefer to draw it on a large sheet of paper because then I can put it aside on one side of the classroom and bring it back at the end of the lesson or at the end of the unit when I need to go back to it. So, ask learners to write what they know or they think they know about the topic. For example, suppose that you are doing a unit on dinosaurs. So, learners come to the board and they write on the poster things that they know or they think they know about dinosaurs. And then, this is the K column. The W column is what I want to know. In this column, they write what they would like to know about dinosaurs, and they do it in the form of questions that they would like to find the answer to, right? Okay, so then at the end of the lesson or at the end of the unit or at the end of both, you can do it at the end of different lessons, you will review the questions in the W column and ask learners to add the statements to the L column, that is what I learned in this lesson. Then you can ask them to look at the questions and decide, are there any questions that remain unanswered? thinking back on the information they have learned. Can they predict what the answers might be? And of course, you can also have a follow-up activity where students try to find out the information that is still missing. I mentioned before the question of the readability tests. Now, the learner's level of understanding of the content should be incorporated into the planning. And one way to do this is by asking yourself if the materials are at an appropriate level of complexity. And if necessary, make adjustments. And how can we make adjustments? By simplifying the text we are offering learners. For example, editing and adapting the level of the reading materials in the book by modifying the vocabulary a bit. Also, if we are using materials from the internet, books other than the class books, we can always learn what the level of the material is and edit the language and the vocabulary. These are 3 tools, online tools, that I use. They are free, and I use them to create my own materials. And so it's very simple, because the only thing that you have to do is paste into the app the piece of text that you want to analyze. You click, and the application will tell you what level the vocabulary is and the language is with reference to the Common European Framework. And some of these will also provide options, synonyms. So next, now when students encounter new ideas, information or skills, they need time to make sense of the materials before it becomes theirs. So this making sense or processing is how students come to understand the content, and this is an essential component of learning. So how can we help them in this process? We can use learning menus or inquiry boards. You can find them under both names. They are basically graphic organizers made up of different numbers of squares, and each square is an activity. The activities help students learn or practice a primary concept while allowing them a choice. And they can be instructed to choose one or more of these activities to complete. They can also progress from one activity to the other, either in an organized way, in random order, as you wish. Now, these have been around for a long time because they originally were made into static paper format pieces. But now with digital tools, we can make them into an interactive and much more fun activity. They can include tic-tac-toe boards, restaurant-like menus, multiple choice grids. For example, you can have thematic inquiry boards. I found this on the internet. I love it. If you're doing a unit on bees, for example, you can fashion the inquiry board like a beehive. If you're doing dinosaurs, you can put the inquiry board on the belly of a stegosaurus, for example. So you can create a thematic inquiry board. You can also make them like a menu, like that of a restaurant menu, with the headings appetizer, entree, and dessert, and tell the students to follow the order of a menu, just as they would in a restaurant. But within each course, students can choose from a list of activities. One thing to remember here is that these sheets should include a well-defined description of how to complete a chosen activity. Make it really simple, right? You can also give each activity points if you wish, so they earn points as they progress, yes? Now, let's go to the product. A product is something that the students generate at the end of a span of learning, yes? And it requires them to apply and extend what they have learned over a period of time. Now, products may range in complexity, but they should have a clear academic criteria and they have to be aligned to the learning targets. For example, after working on a unit of sports, learners can be given a choice of products to do. Yes? For example, here we have three possibilities. Group A will work with water sports, and they can choose one of these tasks. Make a little book on a chosen sport, or make a video presentation with the basic information. Group B will also have a choice of two tasks, but they will be a little bit more challenging. And then Group C has only one task, but it's the most challenging. Now, what formats do we have? This is nothing new. These products are all things that we do in the classroom. Campaigns, class blogs, surveys, debates, speeches, creating books and graphic novels, non-fiction texts, creating a poem, a podcast, designing products, inventions and games, write and stage a play, do a reader's theater. These are all activities that we do with our students in the classroom. They are very familiar, so it's quite easy, I would say, to differentiate the products. Now, I'd like to give you some essential guidelines for developing high-quality product assignments. First of all, decide on the format or formats that the product will take. Sometimes the requirements of the curriculum shape the product. But even so, you can decide on 2 or 3 options and differentiate further by inviting learners to suggest alternative options that are of particular personal interest. So they can, for example, some students can make a video presentation, others can create a PowerPoint, others can give a speech. So they decide. You can give some options. Very importantly, determine baseline expectations for quality. That is, clarify what they should pursue in regard to the content, how they should work, and what indicators of quality they should work toward. Make it clear to them that working quickly sometimes does not equate to working well, and that you expect them to create the best possible thing they can do. Also, it's a good idea to build a checklist of what a good product should be like. So, for example, if you're going to have a debate, okay, brainstorm with the class what the elements of a good debate are, and also, in the case of debates or discussions, build a list of things they should remember, a kind of debate etiquette. Determine how you will support your students. For example, brainstorming ideas to present the product, arranging peer consultation and editing opportunities, providing planning samples. Also, help them relate the product to the real world. Help them see how the ideas and the skills they study at school are used in the real world to address real issues. Encourage them to use and synthesize multiple sources of information. Sometimes I have seen this very frequently. They know how to do this in their own language, but then they fail to transfer this skill into English. Provide templates or organizers to support struggling learners. Establish mini milestones for sections of the product so that they see that they can achieve, progressively achieve certain things. And also analyze models of effective products, that is, examples, samples from previous years or from other classes. Now, as Piaget reflected, the heartbreaking difficulty in pedagogy is that the best methods are also the most difficult ones. And although managing a differentiated classroom isn't always easy, I think that the benefits are worth the challenge. So if you allow me, I would like to offer a few tips that you can use to meet the challenge of designing and managing differentiated instruction for your learners? First of all, have a strong rationale for creating a differentiated classroom and share it with students and parents. If you help them understand and contribute to your view of the classroom, they are likely to support you. Also, begin at a pace that is comfortable for you. Don't try to differentiate everything in a unit. Sometimes it's not necessary, and of course it is not realistic. Take small steps, one thing at a time. Create and deliver instructions carefully. Instead of giving multiple sets of instructions to the class as a whole, give task cards to individuals or groups. Use simple language and bullet points. Agree on some class rules. Promote on-task behavior and convey to students that this will help them do better quality work. Also, engage students in talking about classroom procedures and expectations. Have conversations about what you are all experiencing, individually and as a group. Leave some minutes from time to time so that they can express themselves, talk about their fears, talk about their reservations about what they are doing, their perceptions, and maybe even keep a kind of learning log. Sometimes students like to reflect and write down their ideas, so they may keep a kind of learning log in a separate notebook or in a section of their own notebook where they write the things that they feel, their fears, their successes, and so that they can see how they progress along the year. And last but not least, plan, plan, plan. This is essential. Planning is essential. Yes, it will take you a few more minutes of your usual planning time, but it will work out in the end. And also, build a bank of activities. Don't try to do everything in 1 month, but make a bank. So next year it's going to be easier because you will have that bank of activities, of differentiated activities that you can use. And very importantly, share work with colleagues. If you are sharing the same form with other teachers, work together, share work. This is very important. Well, finally, I would like to share with you, talking about sharing, some references that I think might be useful if you would like to take a screenshot. I have found these resources very, very useful. I think that they provide useful reading material. You are going to find lots of ideas. And really, I would like to say thank you to the Teachers Association, the Latvian Teachers Association, again, for having me in this conference. I would like to thank you, teachers, for attending this talk. Here you have my contact, my blog. I am on LinkedIn and also my email address. So if you would like to contact me, please feel free to do so. I will be very, very happy to answer your questions or give you more references or help you in any way I can. Thank you very much.